Thank you guys for being here. We're here to talk about National Flood Insurance Program. We have two different agents from insurance companies, and could you explain to us what the National Flood Insurance Program is?
Sure. The National Flood Insurance Program is and it's often referred to just as NFIP. It is a flood insurance program created by the federal government, actually in response to most of the Mississippi River floods back in the during and after the Great Depression. That is now a nationwide plan where communities are given the opportunity to self-assess flood risk, and if they do so, then they have the opportunity to become a participating member of the NFIP program, and then the citizens in that municipality can buy flood insurance at a reduced cost that's subsidized by the federal government.
But I have homeowners insurance. Why would I need special insurance for a flood?
That's what I was going to mention, is that the standard homeowners policy has lists of perils that they have collected premium to cover, and some of the more disaster type of things such as flooding, which can be catastrophic, insurance companies haven't been willing to actuarially determine that rate, and the federal government stepped in and said we will be the mechanism through which individuals can purchase that coverage.
That's correct. I think it's also important to understand what a flood is, because homeowners will use flood in a lot of different contexts. Like, for example, my basement flooded because a pipe broke. That's not what the NFIP considers a flood. In general, rule of thumb, I don't have the policy in front of me, the rule of thumb is that a flood is water or a body of water that originates off your premises that then enters your premises and damages your premises. That's the kind of the rule of thumb definition of a flood.
Groundwater
Yeah.
versus interior flooding from a pipe, of overflowing sink, broken hot water tank, or something like that.
That's why I like Reuben. He puts it down on the...
Now, in the context of Juneau, Alaska, I've heard a lot of people talk about thinking that, well, I don't need flood insurance because I'm not in a flood zone or a flood plain, or maybe I can't actually get flood insurance because I am not in a specific flood zone or a flood plain. Can you explain a little bit about who in Juneau can purchase national flood insurance?
Yeah, I mean, if those that are familiar with Juneau know Blueberry Hills, you can buy flood insurance on Blueberry Hills. That's the highest elevation subdivision in Juneau. Flood insurance is available. So there are different zones which are associated with different levels of risk. The lower the risk, the lower the premium. The average premium in a low risk zone is $350 to $400 a year, pretty affordable. If you get in the higher risk zones, I've seen them as high as $5,000 a year. Important though, the flood zones that have been determined are subject to revision and change. So what has previously been a low-risk zone could be rezoned into a higher risk. If you've purchased a flood policy, you're grandfathered in.
So is that why my house on View Drive has been flooded 2 years in a row, but I'm still under $500? Does that keep us lower because we've had it longer?
You're grandfathered in.
So that
And-
means it's good to buy insurance soon so that you
Correct.
have it before any rates go up?
And the zones have not yet been revised, and until they are, can be purchased if you're in the low risk zone, even though your risk is higher now that this new flooding event that we're experiencing very likely can change those zones. You would be grandfathered in if purchased soon.
There's two things I would add to that, and that is that a lot of people perceive that they're in a higher or lower risk than they really are. So there's often sticker shock, both good and bad. Most of the people after the flood that were affected by the flood
In 2024?
in 2024, they would come to me and they were shocked to find out that the premium was still minimum premium,
Yeah.
below $400.
Yeah, and we were informed by some of the FEMA staff in fall of 2024 that the state of Alaska has some of the lowest National Flood Insurance Program premiums in the nation.
That's right.
I was unaware of that until then, so it's something we're trying to let folks in Juneau know about.
But there's another thing too, and that's perceived risk. Blueberry Hill is a good example. While there's not a you're not really going to be a victim of a glacial outburst flood. You may be in a flash flood
Correct.
Area that you didn't even know was a flash flood area. Beaver Dam's been holding it back for years, okay? Or you could suffer from a form of a landslide called mud flow that is actually covered under the NFIP policy.
We've seen in these big rain events, David Street, for example, debris got caught in some of the drainage system, allowing the water to overflow onto the street. And as soon as it got onto the street, that volume of water becomes an unstoppable force and cuts away soil, flows right into homes, and even though it's high elevation, there is still risk. So each homeowner in counsel with their individual agent can pursue and look at those different individual situations.
Absolutely.
Now, two things I worry about in the valley when I talk to people about flood insurance is what about all the homes we have that are split level? I've heard from people that sometimes the lower level of a split level counts as a basement and therefore might not be covered. I'm also worried about how do we make sure that mobile homes and all the different trailer parks we have, people can get that coverage for flood insurance.
There's a lot of things. So to my knowledge, there is no exclusion for basement. What there is that the agent that wrote the policy could have made a mistake and not had that as they might have had that as above grade basement in the way they overwrote it, or as a sub basement. Now, if that's true, then there's still a issue there of coverage, but that could be something that at least preliminarily created a denial. What I think actually might have happened, though, is that it wasn't that it was a basement, it was that they didn't purchase contents, and whatever was stored in that lowest level didn't have coverage, because in a flood insurance policy, it's not like a homeowner's policy, it's a little different. Your structural coverage is only the box of the home. Everything that's inside that box is contents. That's your cabinetry, your heating system, all of that. So I think there might be a conflagration of it was in the basement with it was actually a contents claim.
Yeah. Depending again on the zone, occasionally there will be a requirement for a flood insurance certificate or an elevation certificate to establish what is its elevation above or below the flood level that's established through the mapping system. And if it is lower than that flooding elevation, the premiums are higher. If it's above, it's there. But specifically the situation where it wasn't covered, I would not know what that might be, because that doesn't sound.
Yeah, I'm
Now,
speculating, but that's.
Is it a lot more expensive to try to purchase the maximum contents coverage in these policies? Like, should I be pinching pennies on that part, or is it better to try to maximize my coverage?
In my opinion, no, especially with the preferred rate that's available if you're not in a high-risk area. The combined personal property and structure coverage, they give a preferred rate and a break, and it's just, you're not going to save anything breaking it out. Or very little.
I generally concur. I think that the only reason you might want to do that is, for example, let's suppose that you've got a $2,000 premium for some reason. I think that maybe going ahead and
be in a higher risk zone.
Exactly.
Which then you would consider that. But if you're in a preferred rate area,
Gotcha.
with a low risk of flooding, according to the current maps, no, just buy the preferred rate policy.
My rule of thumb is if it's below $500, maximize your money. Because you're not gaining anything. There's like $20 worth of difference between maximum and minimal coverage at the same price point.
Now, people who have a mobile home, I've read sometimes if a mobile home has wheels attached, it's not covered. Can you speak a little bit to mobile homes?
I can honestly say in 35 years, I have not written flood coverage on a mobile home. No one's approached me for that.
And so if people approach our insurance agents in Juneau, who do they ask for confirmation, or how would they figure out?
Approach us and we go through the quoting process.
Okay.
We can tell them exactly. Again, a lot's going to be determined on where is it in what flood zone. if it's right next to the ocean, and it has a high risk factor, then the premiums are going to be high.
Yep.
Typically, they're going to want to see a mobile home that it's attached or secured. Usually there's strapping that either goes over the top, or most commonly it's a frame strap. It attaches to the frame, is augured into the ground, and keeps it stable from moving in wind and or.
So it sounds like people with mobile homes should go and talk specifically to insurance agents to see if there's any issue with covering their home. Otherwise, it's covered the same as any other type of structure.
Yeah, whether you buy it online on your own or you buy it from an agent, the commission is added in. It just goes to somebody different, okay? So having the expertise of an agent that will take the time to pull up the policy and search that question out for you, I think is really worth the money. And I think
even if someone's not insured through you regularly, can they come to anybody who is a insurance agent to help them sign up for NFIP?
as long as they sell NFIP,
Correct.
yeah.
There's some licensing requirements that the government wants to make sure you just can't put a shingle out and say, I'm going to start selling flood insurance. So you have to have the proper licensing to be able to do that. But the fire policy, if we'll refer it to that, could be with any one agent, and the flood policy with another agent if they wanted a local agent to look at that, and they were, say, with an internet-only company or something like that.
In general, I always recommend, and if somebody comes to me and they've got insurance with Reuben, I straight up tell them, Reuben sells this, and no matter who you buy from, it's a federal program. It's easier to do one claim, get it done. Okay.
Professional courtesy, I would do the same thing and refer them back.
But if someone's insurance agent says they don't sell NFIP
Come see
and
me.
therefore the person can't get it, then they can just shop around to other agents in Juneau?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. One other question. I've heard that stuff that's outside your house or garage is not covered. Does that mean if your fuel tank is destroyed, is that covered, or is that not part of an NFIP policy if it gets floated away?
That is an excellent question, okay? And it depends on the situation. The flood tank may be covered if it's attached to the house or part of the house, but the contents and the pollution liability within that tank is excluded.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for doing this today.
Yeah. We're always available. Give us a call, either one of us. We're local. We
Yep.
want to help people. We want to see them protected. We want to see them be able to recover from the unexpected things that happen in their lives, and the best way to do that is by proper insurance.
I would actually also say, at least for me, I would think Reuben's the same way. We're licensed Alaska-wide too, so if you're viewing this and you're outside of Juneau and you don't have an agent that has an FIP, I think you could call Reuben
Yeah.
Willis State Farm or Emil Mackey Country Financial, and we'll be happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Yep.